As Megan mentioned, thank you for being here. My name is Kyah Broders. I am president of the board Neighbors Proposing Prison Expansion. So I think we're gonna have a great night full of technical issues, so we appreciate your patience and patience. So my name is Kyah Broders, and I will serve as moderator. We are going to be the holiday season and all of your time this evening.
Yeah, before we begin our forum, we ask that you please limit your side conversations. We want to make sure that everyone's voices are heard. Silence your phone and then wait for a microphone to be handed to you prior to asking any questions during that portion. To be respectful of everyone's time, we have compiled many of our questions and will highlight the major questions in our areas of concern. Each topic will have 5 minutes at the end to discuss with our elected officials and additional questions from you.
Notably, is a nonprofit organization, as I mentioned earlier, it stands for Neighbors Proposed Prison Expansion, but in all honesty, our entity is much more than that. Our organization stands for a future where our community's voice is heard and where decisions regarding penitentiary are made in a manner that prioritizes the well-being and interests of our community. Through advocacy, education, and collaborative efforts, we aim to ensure that our rural community remains a place of transparency, accountability, and shared decision-making, preserving our way of life while addressing the challenges at hand.
The intent of this meeting tonight is to inform the public of the issues related to the land that was announced on October 6, 2023, as the proposed location for the newly constructed men's penitentiary for the state of South Dakota.
As many of you are already fully aware, conversations with the state and the Department of Corrections started on October 6th. From that time, we have continued to hear no responses, continue to lack in transparency. As many of you are also aware, we had attempted to invite them to our camp forum, and just prior to that forum, they did decide that based on the lawsuit that we had filed, that they would not be attending. We did reach out again this evening to have them attend, and as you can see at the end, they are not attending again this evening.
We as a nonprofit organization need your support financially and publicly. Finances will be key in our fight in the court of law to support our legal representation. The leadership of Kyah on behalf of Lincoln County to seek clarity on the state's claim that they do not need to go through this planning process and comply with the county's comprehensive plan. In short, we want answers. No Lincoln County is fortunate to have elected officials as well as industry experts joining us this evening to work with us to collectively seek these answers on the issue. We welcome this evening Aaron Allward, Carla Lenz, Kevin Jensen, Joel Harris, Michael Poppins, Mike Kyah, and Stephen Hagar. Thank you for joining us and by speaking with us and sharing out important issues and valid concerns regarding decisions by the state.
Please consider donating money, purchasing signage, and supporting our cause on social media by joining our Facebook page. Public aware of the issues at hand. Public awareness of the issues are really at hand. Additionally, communication with your district representatives, state senators, and Governor Nome are all paramount. Wow, apparently I'm also having technical issues. At our information station, which is located in the back, you'll find that there are several pieces of information back there along with our QR codes. If you aren't familiar on how to run the QR code, we will help you. We will get the information to you in as many forms as you need. Also, please note the agenda we have provided for you, so we do have a stack of 3 pieces of paper there that do include the QR agenda, the agenda in that, and then as well as the press release that we did send to the state to make sure that we could triangulate attendance. This agenda does showcase our talking points for this evening and lists just the beginning of many of the concerns we have with this proposed location.
As a collective organization, no Lincoln County has filed a declaratory judgment to the state of South Dakota. We have filed a lawsuit seeking that we are going to look at the state setting a precedent requiring our state government to comply with the comprehensive plan set forth by our elected officials at the county and city level. Kyah Broders to walk us through where we are from a legal standpoint and where we go from here.
As I previously mentioned, we did file a declaratory judgment. The declaratory judgment is really focused around the need and the requirement of our state to follow the zoning process that we as citizens follow. Many of you are aware that our commissioners, as well as many citizens, have worked very hard on the comprehensive plan in Lincoln County. And we want to make sure that the state abides by that comprehensive plan, as it will create a very large shift if we do not continue to follow the plans set out by our local community elected officials. We have received response from the state with a motion to dismiss. We are currently working on a rebuttal to that motion to dismiss. The motion to dismiss, in summary, really states that the state, being a sovereign power, can and will follow through with where and how they please to disregard the zoning processes, which obviously is the heart of what this is. This is the heart of the concern here in the state of South Dakota. They do reference the House bill that was passed through, which is House Bill 1017. They state that the Department of Corrections does have the ultimate oversight not only in how these funds are spent and allocated, but also where the location is best suited for. So that's really where we're at from a legal standpoint at this moment. We are scheduled to be in court to basically try and defend our standpoint on January 22nd at 3:30 p.m. So that's the most we have from a legal standpoint.
Before we begin, we must look at how this site came to be owned by the state as an effort to truly understand how we got to where we currently are today. We will hear from note member Sarah Ulmer as she discusses the rich history of the proposed site location that the state of South Dakota has provided.
Thank you for being here tonight. I am a neighbor who lives in close proximity to this proposed site extension, so this does affect myself and my family. When they asked me to share the history of this proposed site, I think it's important to do so because it gives the background of how the state acquired this. And, that's something that has come about in my conversations with people. Oh, the state owned it, the state owned it. The story, not only is there a completely disregard for the history of this land, but also the current owners that are around it and will be affected by this decision. It goes back to A.P. Howell, who was one of Lincoln County's earliest settlers. His son Alfred eventually bought the land from his father and farmed this ground until the late 40s and early 50s. When he retired, he then rented the land to Earl Hulverson. Due to Alfred's wife showing early signs of dementia, Alfred gave Earl full power of attorney of this land. Now, by the power of attorney, he could have bought and sold it himself or done anything with it. But instead, he chose to donate it to the state of South Dakota. Both Earl and Alfred were told the land would revert to the school and public lands. They both loved the state of South Dakota and believed in giving back. The current farmer, Lacey, has also worked and loved this land with a great amount of respect for the last 40 years. Looking at the history of this piece of land, it shows a great deal of respect that it deserves. This is a violation of trust for this land's intent and should be a wake-up call for anyone gifting to the state and having their wishes honored and respected. These men, a part of this land's history, loved the state of South Dakota and wanted it to be used for the school for public benefit and enjoyment. That is not what this is being used for. Thank you.
We'll now hand it over to Mike Hoffman to talk a little bit more about the site location.
Okay, well, it's great that we're talking tonight, but, it's great. Probably not the best person to speak offhand here.
Here, it's just to go in this, yeah.
So the location, proximity, I believe is what we're going to speak about here is location. Three major towns in the area, Harrisburg. Really? There you go. Here, kind of put that in. The state of the location, the state just kind of offhand here, look at my boss notes. Location does not make any sense. That's the main focus here. It's not near any utilities, it's not near any main roads, it's not near, it's not near any of the structure you need to have 1,500 bed penitentiary. Typical planning and zoning ordinances are not applying to this, they're not set up for that. If you were to own this land or anything in that area, and you wanted to put up a simple one-stall garage, you got to look through planning and zoning, make sure that you're not going to affect neighbor's property, that it applies to the future growth of that area. Now, one-stall garage is a lot different than a 1,500 bed penitentiary. We were going to attract a lot more people. You could put up a repair shop there without going to planning and zoning. You could put up a hotel. You can see the process. It makes sense. A lot of roads are going to have to build to fill this load between somewhere 200 employees. That's not including food trucks, that's not including service vehicles, ambulances, prisoner transfers, the amount of load that's going to put on the infrastructure of that area makes no sense. The state has went through and done a study of over $500,000 to approximately tell the board what the location for this would be. Near an interstate, near an interchange where the utilities are there, where the pavers are there. They have to disregard any of that information. They've chosen this place purely, from what we can tell, as it is the line item budget to switch over from schools to penitentiary. That's a lot of what we're getting at. The location just makes no sense. We can open it up with it, talking to the board members.
If everybody could look down here, I apologize, this is a little bit hard to see. It's kind of a rough map of what we put together. In the center, the red dot is the proposed prison site on 320 acres, that triangle in there. What you can't really see is the red, which is a 5-mile perimeter of the proposed site. Harrisburg being up in the top corner, Worthing down in the bottom, Canton down in this bottom corner. 5.3 miles roughly to Canton, 4.8 miles to Worthing, and 3.9 miles roughly to Harrisburg. So a 5-mile surrounding of this whole, or this prison. The state says this is out in the rural area. Unpopulated, great place to put it, it's not going to affect anybody. I beg to differ. Next slide, please. 450 some residential houses in that 5-mile perimeter of this prison. That doesn't include anything that's in city limits of any of those 3 cities. I did this fairly quickly. I'm probably off a little bit, but I'm pretty close. So just to give you a perspective of how close this is to you, if If you go back to the last map, you can probably pick out where your house is. This is gonna affect every one of us. So we wanted to show a correlation of how many people live within a 5-mile perimeter of this proposed site.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff, for that visual, and thank you, Mike, for putting things into perspective. The first thing that we wanted to take a look at, if you look at your agenda, we are at the top of page 2. We're going to begin our constructive questions and seeking solutions portion of the evening. So if you take a look at the lack of infrastructure here, this is the first piece that we really need to dive into. There are so many questions that we have surrounding the infrastructure. The first thing that we have, now that you can visualize where this is water source. What is the state's plan for water source? Are we going to use South Dakota water? Do they know? And what does that look like? So there's some questions that we have. In terms of usage, we need to think about how many gallons per day a facility of this magnitude would be using. General use, like laundry, kitchen, personal for drinking water, and then showers and toilets, which will lead into the question of the sewer system. Speaking of the sewer system, who are they going to tie into? Are they going to tie into Harrisburg or Canton? Has that been communicated? And what do those conversations look like? Another option that they could have would be to build an evaporative lagoon system. This is a possibility, as well as building your own water treatment facility. For wastewater treatment, there are concerns around that and what that will look like. Tonight we have an expert here that will talk to us about that. Before we bring him in, we also need to look in terms of infrastructure at things like electricity. What is that going to look like, and who is going to facilitate that? What is the usage in current cities surrounding it, and how would that translate to adding a community of well over 1,500 to be used on top of that? Additionally, when we look at things like gravel roads, we understand that that's not going to be maintainable when we have people coming into work, inmates being transported, and then all of the deliveries that would be needed to be made for meals and things of that sort. When we did some rough estimates with the South Dakota DOT, looking at simply paving 6 miles of road, which would be 1 mile of concrete road with curb and gutter costing approximately $5.92 million for one, we aren't really looking at a cost-effective solution here. Paving those roads alone is going to be an astronomical amount. As we have looked at the wastewater treatment facility and how that would go, we thought that we should bring in an expert. And so we had a great person selected for this evening to speak with us. We brought in a wastewater treatment expert, Kyah Broders. He has over 40 years of experience in the wastewater treatment industry, and is going to talk to us a little bit tonight about his expertise and the options that the state may have moving forward. Mark, come on up. Thank you for being here tonight.
My name is Mark Holzer. Just to give you a little bit of background, I got into the water and wastewater critical back in 1984 in the United States Air Force. I worked at several military installations, both the water systems and wastewater systems throughout Arkansas, Florida, and Portugal. I started in the Air Force and worked with several police colleagues in California. Currently working at a wastewater facility in South Dakota. I'm a resident of Harrisburg. I've been a resident of Harrisburg since 2011. So what I wanted to do is introduce to you a little bit what wastewater is. It's a very biological process. What we try to do with wastewater is instead of discharging the raw wastewater in the river, we use biology to stabilize it in some environment. So the second thing is what does it mean for the prison population? What does it mean for our community? Well, there's 5 options that they have in this prison. One of them is to build evaporative lagoons. The other one is to build their own mechanical treatment facility. And then the third one is to tie into some wastewater agency nearby, which would likely be some Canton, Worthing, Harrisburg, or possibly Sioux Falls if they wanted to do that. So to break this down, what does this mean? Well, with an evaporative lagoon, we've had those here in Harrisburg. For those of us that live in here, we kind of know that we get. So what is wastewater lagoon? It's just a big pond, a little bit ground. You take all your wastewater into it, And then you have biology that tries to break that down. The problem is these microbes in these fields are very temperature dependent. In the state of South Dakota, we have very cold winters. Usually about November to May, those microbes shut down. So they have all this raw wastewater in the state from the prison going into the underground, and nothing would be happening without all the wastewater. In May, when it warms up, all those microbes can go after it and release a lot of iron sulfide and methane gas. And it's going to create an odor zone around the jail facility and our community. How big would that be? Well, that's on the wind today. You can get it 5 miles away from that jail. So that's going to be a new house, it's going to be a line. So then the other option is, well, they could build a mechanical treatment facility. These treatment facilities are very complicated to operate. Second, you have to have certified, state certified people operating these things. So they would have to build a mechanical treatment facility and hire a certified operator to operate these things. To do that, they also have to get a discharge point into the Big Sioux River. Most likely it'll be over here, right across the state from Iowa. So now you have an interstate jurisdiction on that discharge, which is a complicated process. And more easement rights, you gotta get that pipe from where the jail's gonna be over into the Big Sioux River. There's a big regulatory process that goes through there, and we're gonna be monitoring. The third option is tying into a local municipality. So like I said, you got Canton, you got Harrisburg, and you got possibly the Sioux Falls. So how does that mechanism work? That mechanism works basically when the people or the DOC would approach these agencies that have wastewater treatment facilities to determine if they have the capacity. If they have the capacity, then these agencies would sell that capacity to the prison system. Now, I don't know how much they're going to discharge, but typically what we look at is for every person in the room, based on your lifestyle and your work that you're doing, we allocate about 100 hours a day for you. Okay, so the prison would want you about the same things, to have showers and housekeeping and just different things that's going to be going on there. So you take that violation times 100 hours a day. So the agency has determined if they have the capacity. So they would approach Harrisburg or whatever and determine if they have the capacity. They have to buy into that. Depending on where these wastewater agencies are, the capacity of approaching limit, it may kick them into an expansion program. That depends on who they want to work with. And how much capacity they have. That could turn into a construction program for their wastewater plant, which could, I'm speculating here a little bit, it could mean that they're going to have to bond some money to build a bigger treatment facility. The DOC would help pay for that, but also the residents in the town may encumber some costs with that. So what I would suggest is we keep a close eye on this. What we don't want the government to do this. I suspect they may opt for that as the first point of choice because it's a very cheap way to do wastewater treatment. You know, get some excavators and big hole around and solid the clay. You're going to take wastewater in there. Okay, that's not all they have to do with that. So if this prison system does take off, what we want to do is try to watch out for what are they looking at with the infrastructure. So that's what I want to say about that. I hope that helps you understand what you're looking at when we get into the construction, if they get into construction of this facility. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that explanation and for your expertise in this matter. Does the crowd have any questions related to that topic as we look further to more possible answers for the state in this process?
So how this will work is in between each statement. So for now, if you have any questions on infrastructure or for Mark, if he's willing to answer, take about 5 minutes. Jeff has a microphone and we'll bring it to you. You don't have to come up. You can ask a question. You can ask the question to us, to the state, or to Mark. Let us know your thoughts.
Yeah, Colette Johnson Bliss, I'm from Harrisburg. I guess my question is given all these issues with infrastructure, how can we as the no group take steps to make it very difficult for the state to proceed? I mean, how can we put some barriers and blocks in place and hurdles that they have to go over before this can actually happen to develop these infrastructure issues?
Anybody on the panel have a response to that? I guess I'll fill a little bit of time here. My opinion on how we stop this is we really have to, we have officials here that are on our commission. We really have to be contacting our state, our county commissioners, and we gotta get involved. We have to let them know that we're not in favor of this. Probably it'll get mentioned later, but there's a commission meeting next Tuesday morning, and I think it's very pertinent that we are there to express that we are not in favor of our county being in favor of it. Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, it's a cost. Talk to your commissioners and your legislators.
Who are you?
Talk to your legislators, your commissioners. It's a cost. All these costs of infrastructure are for one single person. When you're talking about $6 million for a road, there's no need or use of paved roads there except for this one purpose. And that's expense that we don't need to do. And one of the arguments for the site was we're going to save a lot of money by using our land. We're not going to save near maybe not at all. So that's what we need to do.
Not sure, okay. It was on me. Kevin Jensen. I don't know if this is necessarily an issue that's made it harder on the state. Let's make the state do everything the right way. I reached out to EPA. EPA was a difficult section. Whenever you're going to put in rules or anything, pipelines, like water quality studies. This property is on a high point, integrated, pretty close to half a mile away that meanders towards Sioux Falls. So we're going to put lagoons in there. There's concern about water quality on the wells, using wells or anything south of that. But that's one issue. Another issue is if federal money is involved, it's supposed to be a 90-day, minimum 90-day period for comment period. And we haven't seen that. And it looks like there are some federal funds that possibly could be used for this. I'm not sure the construction, but in the budget plan, there's our federal funds coming into the planning budget anyway. The other thing with the on the EPA side is let's see, I don't want to sit down there. But the section 6 is very important. That's the water quality stuff. And the other thing is it's supposed to be an environmental impact study anytime you're moving that much further down. After they release, I was told about 2 days before they released the assessment on that, but within a week, they would have crews out there doing drilling and doing land studies. As far as I'm concerned, nothing's moved up there. According to what Randy Burke told me, is they were going to have any equipment out there. So it's just speculation that maybe they moved too fast and they didn't cross all T's. The EPA really has a place in this, and I think nothing else get this thing slowed down. Sometimes the land is just not suitable for building certain things. And I guess that would be a great goal of mine. Because there's so much, there's the clay and sand on here. Some of the sand under the building is very safe. I've got some more things on the budget stuff later on some more questions. But I really think the EPA needs to be involved in this. EPA has not responded to me, of course, we can't get Amazon and government office right now, whether they've actually requested that.
My name is Sandy Schultz. I live about a mile away from the proposed site. I've been doing some research, and I just looked at the 2022 DOC report. You can find it online. Just look it up there. They reported that they thought in 18 years, by 2041, they were going to have over 3,600 men. That was the proposed number of men. So we're talking 1,500 now, but they're talking needing over 3,600 in 18 years from now. I just wanted to bring that to.
Thank you, Sandy. We have one last question or comment here from Mark, and then we can move on to the next.
Yeah, I got a question. I did look at the DOC website today too, and I'm still just kind of getting up to speed on this, but it seemed like the report pointed to originally the site was going to be constructed next to the Juvenile Detention Center, 4 miles west of Sioux Falls. And I didn't have time to go deeper into that. Does anybody know why it switched from there to here? But it was outside the city of Sioux Falls. So I'm just curious why it got switched.
Not enough land. They said not enough
I can make a
land.
comment on that. I think we're trying to get that answer from the state. We don't have the answer. The only thing that we're being told is that they own the land. And it's 320 acres out there versus the 60 that's in Sioux Falls.
The other thing that we were told earlier on, there was a little bit of communication, is that site didn't have enough land. I mean, we kind of speculate that their plans are to start moving a lot of the other facilities that are located throughout the state here. So it was common for us to hear that property is not much.
With our next slide, as we have heavily alluded to, when we're talking about the environmental impacts, not only are we concerned about the sewage, as we have mentioned, but with that amount of concrete, as well as hard surface, there will be an impact in the groundwater as it relates to runoff. With any prison system, light pollution is very much a concern, especially when a citizen like myself enjoys a nice starry night. That will no longer be a thing, depending on what sort of light source they put in there. Prisons are heavily lit to make sure that they can see into each and every corner. Noise pollution, it will be vastly different than what we are seeing right now. There's obviously numerous visits that occur, the employees who do the shift work, there are going to have to be the utilities as well as the delivery traffic, sirens if there are emergencies, as well as protests if any do occur. Any questions or additional comments that we would like to add to that? As a reminder, if you do have a question, please do state your name and where you're from.
I think we can comfortably move on to the next piece. This next piece is something that's brought up a lot of questions regarding the site selection. And that comes into play when you look at traffic, public transit, and social support. So one of the things that we're really curious about with this site location is how are we going to facilitate visitors to visit the inmates or the incarcerated? How do they get there? Currently in Sioux Falls, we offer a variety of resources like a lift, Uber, and public transportation. That's non-existent in Lincoln County versus Minnehaha. What does it look like when we go through the process of intaking inmates? And then what does it look like when we have protests from time to time? What will that traffic entail? And what does it look like to get those people to that area? When we think about something like work release, where are we going to be completing work? Currently, they have contracts with the city of Sioux Falls. Is this something that will need to transfer to Canton, Harrisburg, or Worthing? Are they going to be using this time to transport people to Sioux Falls to continue those contracts? The impact on local businesses working with the state in this program are already set up in Sioux Falls. Is that going to need to be changed? That's a question that we're wondering from the state. Another piece of this comes in the form of discharge duties. This is something that has brought up a lot of concern for the people surrounding the area. For example, what is the mode of transportation to meet with parole agents? There is no public transportation. And then, if you are released, how are the released people supposed to go anywhere? Currently, there's a bus stop within a block of the penitentiary, and that's how they leave. Where are they to go from there without that facility or without that service available? Finally, we don't have the lack of support in Lincoln County for offenders and families. We don't have housing and healthcare set up for discharged inmates. We don't have the job opportunities available to meet the requirements that they'll need to be on the state. This is just a few of the concerns we have in this area, and we know that you have many more. So now, again, we'll open it up to questions that pertain to traffic, public transit, or social support.
Jerry Plummer, a citizen of Lincoln County and a member of the Locals. One thing I think we also have to take into consideration is if you look at the prison, it's been in Sioux Falls for many, many years, since 1800s. And there's also that social support. We have to also think about places like the St. Francis House, the Mission, because a lot of these people, when they come out of prison, they have no place to go. And these services are already in Sioux Falls. You know, it's kind of evolving. So how is that going to be recreated, and where is that going to be recreated? I just wanted to add that as part of this discussion.
Okay, seeing no other questions or comments from the crowd, we will continue to move into, oh, we do have one. Right up front.
My name is Denny Sisson, Harrisburg resident for a long time, certainly against this. It feels like these are all talking points. If we could bring this to a vote, then we could bring these things up to the people that are involved. And really what we need right now is an injunction to stop it where it is and file petitions to bring it to a vote. Kevin, maybe you know more about what the process is to bring it to a public vote, but all these things we're talking about would convince people before they go into the booth of what's going to happen if this thing is built in our area.
Aaron Elwood from Harrisburg, South Dakota. Just to add to that, so that's been looked at. Right now, you can do that at the county level. If it was a county issue, you can petition with signatures, signatures for each vote. But right now, as it says, you can't do that with a state issue, unfortunately. So that's something that would have to be changed in law. But great idea for sure.
Michelle Jensen, I kind of have a follow-up question to that. Is there anything that can be done on the state level with appropriations? I mean, clearly there's some funding that's necessary, there's some funding in place. Can we defund? What can we do there?
You're talking about language. I was going to go back to that first question you brought up. This thing isn't fully funded yet, so it's a tall task if you get the other legislation here to say no to that funding. That would be the number one. I know a lot of people want this in their backyard, so if somebody up in Aberdeen can get them to vote against the funding to be tough, but I'm right there with you. That's
what are you guys hearing for final numbers? Are you guys hearing anything that we're not?
Well, I did talk to someone, another legislator that serves on appropriations, and of course, they've seen the numbers on this more than we have, and this particular person, actually served on the study committee for this some years back. In my mind too, there's still monies for this that has to be appropriated. However, you have legislators from across the state that may hear this, that may be aware of it, but, if we live down the Spearfish, we might probably be too concerned about what's going on in the county. Feel bad for you probably, but, so that's gonna be the hard sell, is to communicate to other legislators why this is not a good fit and what can we offer that is better. So I think we have to be able to do that. One thing that is concerning to me is everybody's seeing how inflation is right now. And everything's skyrocketing. And so in my mind, I think we're gonna have way more than, was it 680 million total? It's gonna be more like $1 billion. And actually this appropriator told me he thinks it's gonna be 1.2 billion. So again, we're gonna have to find the money for that. And, so that's gonna be a discussion as well.
We have a couple of things to that. I think those of us that served the last couple of years, there was a thing, right away, that was proposed out of this river. And that was gonna cost millions of dollars. And East River people didn't go along with that, and a lot of the local people out there didn't go along with it. And that's why we did get defeated. So the possibility, there was a possibility. My approach to that really is on the operational budget. Last year's budget was about $31 million to operate. The projection for this year is $38 million. Last year they projected a 30% turnover rate for staff. For next year, they're projecting a 40% turnover rate, and they haven't even put a shovel in the ground yet. It's going to cost a lot more. Everything we do is going to cost more. Maybe firefighters. No volunteer firefighters. Okay. Okay. Level 1 emergency. Who's going to handle that now? Right now, Sioux Falls Fire Rescue does, and they're just down the street. Our emergency firefighters. One of the responses that really drove me out of the country was about firefighting. In emergency services, fire departments probably do 90% of emergency rescue. One of the things that really disturbed me in the answer was, we're going to have fire suppression system. Well, that doesn't mean anything. If you have everybody up, clean up, you have that, you have all of those stuff going on. So if they're going to duplicate all the services that they get in Sioux Falls right now, and then put all of that prison, what's the cost of that? We're going to keep it, saying they're going to keep the Jameson Annex open. And I think that's about a $5 million a year cost. Well, we're going to probably duplicate those services here, plus additional, because again, we're going to have ambulance services and most of them, we handle locally in the prison. Those are the areas that we're not, very few people are talking about. But when it comes down to voting for the budget, if you're going to be adding $20, $30 million a year to the operation of the building like that, and remember, it takes a 2/3 vote in appropriations to spend money on annual
I have one, live in Canton, close ties. And so along with that, with speaking with the state about the money and the funding, is that a way that you can get the other legislators, like you're saying, against it? Because you're not talking about taking $1 or $2 million. You're talking about taking hundreds. So what does that take away from that? Say somebody out in Spearfish would want. They've got roads, they've got bridges that they want to do. That's only $5-6 million. For some of those. So here, they're taking $200 million away from them. That's,
Money talks.
yeah.
Yeah, I know, we have a pretty strong conservative presence in the state when it comes to spending money. Right off, what that rule is, just because of the money. Probably more than that, right? Like I said, more careful and more immediate. And again, it's two birds in the house, two birds in the center. And then if there's any differences between the two budgets that have actually go to the corporation or has to go to committee, to discuss the differences and the differences have to be accepted. And, you know, it's not an easy process.
Sir, you spoke of the injunction. That, I'm not, but that is the basic purpose of our lawsuit. It's in the motion process right now, as I understand. When that case is a calendar, they cannot proceed with any kind of guilt until that case is settled. That's my understanding. And so, the basis of our lawsuit is to slow this thing down until we can get some questions.
Thank you for the great conversation. As we continue, obviously a large concern is of the community impact, which is a big pillar for us, not only local residents, but as we have previously highlighted, the surrounding areas as well. Safety will look considerably different. I will acknowledge the fact that there have been very few attempts as far as escape. However, you just never know what that will look like, especially with the staffing shortages and now the longer transportation in and out of Sioux Falls, depending on how they have that process set up. We also like to talk a little bit about the cholestatic load. For a definition in that aspect is a cumulative effect that chronic stress, especially for the local community, can have on mental and physical health. What will that look like for the citizens close to the area? Will they be able to enjoy and feel safe in the outdoor area as they previously had? For many that are aware, there is a high incidence of drugs as well as paraphernalia in the community that will be introduced, with the fact that that's a major problem amongst all prison systems. Impact on local and county strategic planning, as we have previously touched on, that developing aspect. Should the state succeed in proceeding with this location, what happens with the surrounding area? Does it become more heated for other very industrial use such as meat complex, gas stations? When we talk adding infrastructure, we talk having paved roads, we talk big business coming in. It makes it more heated for them and it essentially shifts into an industrialized area. Rural community is obviously going to disappear with that aspect. With an industrialization, you shift away from the ag focus and you shift more towards those heavy industrial uses, as well as what is our quality of life going to look like. As previously mentioned with cholestatic load and the safety, not to mention the paraphernalia and likely will be found, especially if there is a sewage system that will be in that moving process. A lot of that paraphernalia will be flushed and moved into that system. So there'll be an additional safety risk for that as well. Any questions or comments in regards to that?
Mike Hoffman, board member, obviously you're still here, my background is construction, among other things. The replacement, decision making of it, policy and things. In 09, when I was president of the Homeland Association, Sioux Falls Empire, we were the #1 county in the United States for growth. Now I think we're currently 9th. If you look at Euro Canada, pretty much horseshoe on Sioux Falls. Where's the penitentiary, right in the horseshoe? Yeah. You're going to stifle the #9 county in the United States. You're not going to have your developers in the area buying land around there reach in that direction. I have, you know, more months than whether it's here, pollution or whatever, that is not something you choose to live with. It is a likely effect of growth pattern of South Dakota in this area. Getting back to the growth plan, yes, looking at those counties and cities, they project out 10, 15, 20, 30 years where they need to have the water sewer so that they can do it. Common sense way, where they know where the road is going to go at an intersection, near the interstate, some corridor. Putting this and running all that infrastructure to a field in the middle of Lincoln County makes no sense. Common sense doesn't make sense. That's going to affect your quality of life, it's going to affect taxes. You know, you go down the line, it's going to affect everything you do. The visitation, you know, you talk about business, how's that going to affect? You're judging of the people you associate with. They're in prison for a reason. People are going to them, the family, not saying all that, not judging any of them, but like crowds kind of run together. You're going to have an influx of people that are not desired, although we want to remove the location that has no infrastructure for it. Another thing kind of off the line is kind of withdrawn 10 feet. The sewage pipeline, the original path was a mile north of this. Now they made it a mile south of this. We're working with the county, and my wife is very involved working with the county and other organizations to establish setbacks. And they'll worry about schools, and they'll worry about nursing homes. Nursing homes. They're worried about nursing homes and schools, that kind of thing. For evacuation, if you do have an eruption, how long is it going to take to evacuate 1,500 unit prison? You're sentencing little people to death. I don't need to be dramatic about it. If we're doing setbacks and planning, making sure that our intersections are safe and that the corridors are planned correctly so we can get people in and out of school, church, and work, we should at least plan ahead that we're not going to have a gas chamber sitting down there. Yes, it's going to be really dramatic. If something problem ever happened, that's what the planning and zoning is for. So if you give us a pipeline, and you give us a penitentiary within 2 miles of each other, somebody's not thinking. You need to pay attention. And I'm speaking to the state folks, you're here for a reason to understand this. You can't show this status and expect it to work and not have a plan. Go ahead. That's it.
I got a question for the commissioners. Can you explain to us how this fits in the Lincoln County Comprehensive Plan?
Thank you, Commissioner Collins. I will tell you that with your efforts and what I believe Commissioner Aaron's this should come and get presented for just like anything else we want to come to the county. Our comments have to be somewhat reserved. What I think, there is nothing in our comprehensive plan that currently would have foreseen anything like this in that area for 5 years.
What our comprehensive plan is currently being reviewed, is there any aspects in there that are adapting to accommodate for the prison?
There is nothing in it that has been discussed currently other than we are recognizing that there could be a significant impact to that area that would undoubtedly change that area.
This is totally inconsistent with the Joel Ayers County Commission. This is totally inconsistent with the county plan. There's no plan for doing this whatsoever.
I've had some communication with your board's attorney. Next Tuesday, the county commission is going to be considering a motion directing our state's attorney to file an amicus brief in the lawsuit that's currently pending between your group and the state of South Dakota. And essentially what that would be asking is for the issue coming from ultimately for the issue coming from the county commission for planning and zoning votes. So I urge you to show up next Tuesday at the meeting and provide your comments to the commissioners.
We got time for one more?
Last one.
I'm Kyah Broders, Harrisburg. I'm just wondering. Sorry, you can hear me now. Yeah, I'm not used to this. Kyah Broders, Harrisburg. Just have a question for the commissioners. Can you tell me why some commissioners that I've spoken with have told me that they're not able to discuss any of this due to litigation, and why some of you were able to attend?
So county commissioners wear two different hats. One is the legislator hat. That's when we make the rules regarding what the comprehensive plan is going to say. We have unlimited ability to think and talk. It's just like state legislators when they make a law. However, we wear a second hat as well. That's a judge hat, where when a planning and zoning issue comes in front of the county commission for consideration by a petitioner, for example, if the state of South Dakota had to come in front of us and say, we'd like your permission for a conditional use permit to build a prison. We can't sit there with preconceived ideas or a bias when we sit as members of the Board of Adjustment or on planning and zoning. So that means, just like a judge in a regular court case, he or she can't go around saying they're going to find everybody that's charged with a crime guilty, right? That would be a biased judge. None of us would want to be in front of a biased judge. We want an open, independent, open-minded judge. So when planning and zoning issues come in front of the county commission, we're not allowed to state an opinion before the hearing. We have to hear the facts that come in front of us at the hearing, and then we have to apply the law to the facts. Then we get to make our decision. So, for example, people like to call up the commissioners ahead of time and lobby them on a pending application. And unfortunately, we don't need to be rude or discourteous. You simply have to tell the person who calls us very respectfully, hey, I understand your position, but I have to keep an open mind. Please bring this issue in front of the full commission so everybody can hear it. So when these issues are pending in front of the commission, that's what we're required to do. We can't take a preconceived position.
Most people say I can talk plenty loud. Is anybody not hearing? Thank you. So I concur with Commissioner Aaron. We have to keep.
Okay, thank you. We have to keep a very open mind, and that's what I've said this before. We have to be very confident of what we're listening to, what we're taking in, because we have to have in our presentation both sides at the table when it's getting presented. Well, our reason for coming here is to answer some questions about the county, general questions, not necessarily specific to this project or proposed project, but are germane to what questions you have, what may happen in the county during or even after something.
Thank you for the great questions. The summer microphone here. Thank you for that, commissioners. So really in short, and please correct me if I'm wrong, commissioners, but we need everyone that is in this room to show up, if possible, at 8:30 on December 26th at the Lincoln County Courthouse. If you are unable to attend to help support or make your voice known, please seek out one of us that are wearing the no badge. We also have our contact information. We would for sure like to have a list of people that are in opposition to this and unable to attend, as well as any letters with points as to why this would not be appropriate, so that we can have this in front of our commissioners.
We're going to take a look at our next topic, medical emergency responses. So we have broken this down into two pieces, medical emergency response and law enforcement response. So firstly, we're going to take a look at low frequency, high acuity scenarios. Currently, just giving some perspective, there are 28 departments in Minnehaha for fire and 15 in Sioux Falls alone. Harrisburg is a volunteer department, Canton, a volunteer department as well. The current response time in Sioux Falls is less than 5 minutes and under 2 miles. We would not be facing those same statistics at this site in Lincoln County. For emergency medical services, we understand that the EMS would not be volunteer, it's contracted through Sanford. However, we need to look at the logistics. Even though it's still through Sanford, they're going to have longer commutes, it's going to be logistically more challenging, and there will be that delayed response time. For medical services, the clinic resources, Canton has 5, and it's unlimited in Sioux Falls. In terms of the internal clinic or infirmary, what would the hours for operation be? Would an additional infirmary be on site at this location, as well as the one that they can really open at the Jameson Annex? And finally, what is our plan for personnel or inmates that are experiencing a significant medical issue, like cardiac or stroke symptoms, or other escalated traumas? The next piece is looking at law enforcement. So for our police, we have over 280 officers in Sioux Falls. Creighton, Harrisburg, and Worthing combined don't come close to that number. 7 sheriffs and 32 deputy sheriffs are currently employed in Minnehaha County. In Lincoln County, we have 1 sheriff. As Mike mentioned, the CO2 pipeline is logistically challenging as well. When we look at how emergency evacuation would take place, we need to think of not only the 1,500 inmates that would be put in the penitentiary to start, but the increased number as that number grows, as well as the personnel that are employed there. The response of law enforcement for attempted escapes. In 2011, the South Dakota Police Department was present within minutes to prevent and mitigate efforts. The highest risk for escapes is road transport. So when we talked about public transportation earlier, we need to think about adding this increased distance for cares of the incarcerated, as well as increased distances for work release or other factors. To hit home for law enforcement, Jerry Munt had written a letter to the editor that was very powerful and impactful. We wanted to share that with you. If you have not heard or read that yet, it really puts things into perspective as someone that has worked in and been around law enforcement for a long period of time.
Sam Hazel. Dear editor, I've heard many arguments for and against the proposed South Dakota State Prison site to be in Lincoln County on 278th Avenue.
1 mile west.
Yeah, only 1 mile west of I-11. I agree with the opposition and agree with few, if any, state arguments. My family and I moved back to the Canton area in 1990 from Denver metro area. I worked as a deputy, sheriff, special investigations detective, and the DEA task force agent. When we moved back to the Canton area, my wife grew up in Canton, and I was a Canton police officer from 1981 to 1983. I started with the Sioux Falls Police Department in 1990 and moved to Lincoln County as I did not want to raise our children in the city. We were able to find a rural location near Harrisburg in Canton to provide that atmosphere for our kids. I worked for the Sioux Falls Fire Department for over 25 years and retired 8 years ago. We lived in our home on Highway 11 for 32 years. My dealings with the state have been somewhat limited aside from the interviewing inmates for narcotics and arson charges, assisting in prison riots in the early 90s, watching several of my fellow officers walking out into the sewage ponds off Cliff Avenue and Chambers who apprehended an escapee. We, the police and sheriff's deputies, would occasionally get notice from the pen advising us of a high-risk release, usually a convicted child molester, rapist, or other violent offender who had completed their entire sentence flat time, but who is still considered a danger to the public. These criminals were given their striped and civilian clothes and walked out the front door. The street crimes unit and others were sometimes assigned to monitor these guys to make sure they didn't reoffend. We don't wish to live 2 houses from that front door. Ron Johnson, a prison guard, murdered by 2 inmates who have since been executed by the state of South Dakota. After Ron was murdered, beaten with a pipe and suffocated with plastic wrap by Eric Robert and Rodney Berger, they took his clothes and posed his car, escorting the prisoner out of the front door for some sort of point. They got as far as the front door of the prison and were 1 door away from freedom. The final guard between them, North Drive, recognized him. Luckily for the civilian population of Sioux Falls, the guard was also a amateur case writer and subdued both subjects. 2 officers on my shift and I took custody of them and transported them to the police department about 6 blocks away. The inmates in the penitentiary are there for a reason. They don't accidentally get sent there. Most are violent or have that potential. No moral code, no regard for anyone but themselves. Rodney Berger made a joke about the murder just before he was executed. Really comes quickly in my profession. Reality comes quickly in my profession. My point is that the penitentiary, like a CO2 pipeline, not to get off the subject, can remain unnoticed, out of sight, out of mind, unless something goes wrong. And something always goes wrong. Why would the state move the penitentiary with 1,500 criminals away from the support of 290 officer police department, a county sheriff's department with another 60 or so deputies, not counting the substantial jail staff, 2 trained SWAT teams, K9 units, and a fully trained riot control squad located several under 8 blocks from the pen. To a rural county setting supported by a small but competent sheriff's department, sometimes manned by 2 or 3 deputies during certain times, located 8 miles from the proposed site. The penitentiary needs to stay in Sioux Falls. The site could be in an industrial tract in the northwest and northeast area of Sioux Falls, Veterans Boulevard and I-90, near the new Sioux Falls Fire Department and Fire Training Center, or northeast of the current Penn site, near 4th Avenue in Algonquin, next to the Department of Homeland Security office. No added stress would be added to the already existing infrastructure. Although I realize Sioux Falls will financially benefit by moving the pen somewhere else, the current pen already draws services from Sioux Falls Power, Water, Sewer. It already draws services from the Sioux Falls Ambulance Service, Police, Minnehaha County Sheriff's Office, and Fire Service. The residents and homes in the area have been near the pen for many years and were built there with full knowledge of the pen's location. We are extremely disappointed with our commissioners who will not condemn or even speak against the proposed site. I'm waiting to hear an objection from Jim Baldwin, who has always been received my support in the past and has always responded to my inquiries. This proposed site which shows in the darkness nothing good comes from that. The argument of the state already owns the land is a non-sequelae. The land in Lincoln County was left to benefit schools and agriculture. And the state wants to sell, auction off the proposed Lincoln County land and use the proceeds to put forward the purchase of a more suitable location. My vote is with you. Almost done. Stop moving on Lincoln County.
Big thank you to Jerry. Jerry is present tonight and is very much willing to discuss this very well written and exceptionally thought out letter with both of us in attendance. If you need assistance in reaching out to him, again, please seek one of us out and we will connect you with Jerry to help discuss any further questions or concerns regarding this important issue and the role of law enforcement in our forum. The next piece that we'd like to shift into is about that county economic impact. So when we take a look, and Commissioner Aaron, I'm not sure you'll be able to chime in on some of this after your meeting with the auditor of Minnehaha County. The Minnehaha public defender budget is currently set at $5 million. Our Lincoln County public defender budget is $0. When you take a look at the comparative numbers of Minnehaha County, there's just over 200,000 residents. And when you look at the population of Lincoln County, there is just over 71,000 residents. When you talk about indigent defense, it's currently being increased due to the wait times. And there is also a proposal within the budget at this point for the indigent defense expense, the legislation, which will have to be passed. But a big piece on this is that it will very much slow the economic velocity within our county.
So, just a bootstrap onto Kyah's comments. So Kyah called me earlier this week, I didn't get a chance to send her a message back. I think she was asking for some numbers from me. The current public defender budget in Lincoln County is about $1.25 million per year. Our state attorney's budget is just a little bit above that, so it's about 1.3, 1.4 million. In South Dakota, the current law says that when a prisoner in the custody of the Department of Corrections commits a crime, for example, the lobby for death, homicide issue, the county that is the host, the county in which the person sits, is responsible. So what that means is your property tax dollars will go towards the defense of the prisoner to pay for his lawyers. You know, basically the law of the Constitution says you have to provide everybody defense if they're indigent. That falls back on county taxpayers here in South Dakota. There is a bill right now in the legislature, a proposal for a bill, in which the state would assume those expenses. Because why is it fair that a person who was convicted out in Jackson County, who then gets into a fight in Lincoln County, or, in Minnehaha County right now, well, the Minnehaha County taxpayers have to pay for his indigent defense. So hopefully the legislature will pass that bill. Number two, what Kyah brought up with me was this issue of what does Minnehaha County currently spend on indigent defense, okay, for prisoners. I had a meeting with 2 weeks ago, I had a meeting with the Minnehaha County Deputy State's Attorney Eric Rowe. I also sat down with Lee Henderson, as well as some of their staff. And what I was trying to find out is how much money Minnehaha County spends for the prisoners.
Basically, thank you. Basically, they don't keep those statistics.
No, they don't.
They don't put a little P for prisoner next to every indigent expense that comes through every time they have to go in and defend a prisoner in court. Additionally, they told me it could take all the way up to 50 or 150 hours of research for their department to figure that out. And they would want to charge for that. Now, in Minnehaha County's defense, it's not because they were trying not to be transparent or they don't care, they don't want you to know this money. They just don't keep statistics that way. And this is the first time they basically ever been asked this question as well. So then I went down the street and talked to Carl Thomas, who's the circuit court
court administrator for the Second Circuit. The Second Judicial Circuit is for Minnehaha and Lincoln counties. Carl keeps all the statistics for how many people are charged with a crime, how many civil cases there are, etc. I asked Carl to run a search using the court database for how many people have an address of using the PIN on the hill up there in Minnehaha County. Now, he hasn't gotten back to me yet with the exact numbers on that. They're still going through their process to be able to pull all that down. Now, at my peril, I'm going to give you a wild estimate based upon institutional knowledge, the experience of the court system, and some of those things. And essentially, the dollar amount that we're probably looking at as a county to handle this would be somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 a year. That's the cost of deputy. That's another deputy sheriff that we pay out on the streets. So that's another $50,000 to $100,000 that comes out of our budget that otherwise has to be spent by on the attorneys to take care of indigent defense.
We will now open it up to questions or additional comments in that regard. Seeing none that are legally obvious, we will just continue with our presentation, as well as a reminder that currently Lincoln County is the highest tax county in South Dakota.
So we looked at how the economy would be impacted from a county standpoint. Now we need to look at how this would impact you personally. We need to think about real estate and the price changes that would occur. Again, it's hard to speculate. As we've been pointed out, speculation doesn't hold up in court. However, this is a very real issue that we would be facing. Again, with our taxes, how would those change as we look to support roads, sewage, water, power, gas, all of those needs, as well as the legal and representative needs that Commissioner Aaron's just spoke with us about. When we look at this again, we're looking at splitting the taxes as a difference of $205,000 to $71,000. Before we move on to the workforce impact, are there any questions or comments in regards to the personal economic impact that having this facility surrounding your area would have?
We got a question over here to the left.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Eric Coleman, Kansas, South Dakota. This is going to tie into our individual expenses and taxes and so forth, but it can also be expanded to every citizen of this in the state of South Dakota. And I'd like to explain how. You know, we're replacing a 150-year-old facility, and I don't think anybody in this room would argue with the fact that we need to replace the facility. When I come from a baking background, and so I've seen a lot of projects. And whenever you have a highly improved piece of real estate that goes on a piece of bare land, such as retail, multi-housing, and so forth, the cost of the land becomes less and less significant as the dollar amount of the improvements increase. Makes sense, right? With the prison, the cost of the land ends up being a rounding error when you're looking at the budget of the total project. So where it is placed economically is relatively insignificant. They said that the 60 acres that's by the juvenile detention center, that there wasn't enough land. I would venture to say that you could probably find a parcel of land, maybe even adjoining it, that would, the owner would sell it for $25,000 an acre, like they had appraised this ground for. But going past all of that business, the cost of the project, I mentioned earlier, it's a 150-year-old facility. It's not going any place. If we put it in the wrong place, we have to look at what the ongoing expenses are of putting it there. And we need to look at the efficiency. And this is what the Department of Corrections has probably glossed over. But it's very important to even the people up in Aberdeen that you might have trouble getting their legislator to convince them that, well, as long as it's not in their backyard, I don't care where it goes. I'd like to throw something out. If you're trying to put a square peg in a round hole, everyone in the state is going to pay for these additional ongoing expenses. The prisoner transfers, the emergency expenses, safety protection, the infrastructure that is for the bonding for new sewage systems and so forth. All of that is going to probably be paid for by the state, realistically, hopefully. And if we, as in the state of South Dakota, we have a balanced budget. We have to have a balanced budget. And so if there's additional costs to put this prison in the wrong place, that money's going to have to come from somewhere. We're either going to have to raise our taxes, or if we don't do that, we're going to have to take it from something else. Something else would include education, healthcare, transportation, and believe it or not, law enforcement. If they're having problems in law enforcement, which may include the correctional facilities, they may have to be pulling money out of the budget to pay counties and even the state pay for law enforcement, because it has to go to the prison. So I guess I'm looking at this from not only from a microeconomic view, but from a macroeconomic view.
I was gonna speak about the real estate side of things, since they're over and in real estate in the area. I've been asked how this is gonna impact our homes for $1 not saved, and I don't have a crystal ball in that regard. What I can speak to is what I see with my buyers on a daily and weekly basis, and what's important to them when they search for their homes. And when you get into 200, 300, 400, 500,000 plus on the value of a property, you deserve to be paid. And when you're open to different areas, you're not pigeonholed for a purpose of moving into one community. What are you looking at in that community that's going to serve your family for safety purposes? On the other side of that, when you deal with sellers, and I'm sure everybody in this room has sold a property at one time or another, you get feedback on why the buyer didn't choose your home. And unfortunately, here in Lincoln County, I feel like we are being dealt a very ugly hand of not only the carbon pipeline, but now this penitentiary. And so we're really looking like a sweet spot in this neck of the woods. And I find it very unfortunate. So although I can't give a dollar amount of what our values will decrease, I know how I deal with my buyers and sellers. And this isn't a positive look for any of us in our community and the people that will be visiting in and around the community. Thank you.
Kevin or Carla, could you guys speak on what, budget money has been allocated, what Christie has proposed for this year's budget, the $220 million, and where that's coming from?
Oh, maybe they can add to this a little bit, but when you ask where it's coming from, the gentleman over here made a good point. It's going to come from somewhere. You know, and that just, as we go through appropriations and we meet throughout the session, that budget will vary a little bit, gets tweaked here and there. So to say exactly where it's going to come from at this point is
95 people.
Yeah, but going forward, it's just starting. So it's going to fluctuate throughout the course of this whole session. So as far as going forward, it's just hard to say right now.
I would just add, in the budget address, we were told that there was a shortfall, I believe it was at 27 million for the women's prison. And again, that's just more indication that obviously we're gonna have a shortfall for what has been budgeted for this. There's, some of this has been appropriated, but there's probably another 380 million or something that's supposed to be appropriated again, for a total of over 600 million for this project. And like we said before, you know, it's probably gonna cost way more than that because of what we see with inflation. And so again, we're gonna have to go forward, you know, obviously we're gonna have to have an alternative place. And I think that's our best bet, other than, you know, the lawsuit and everything. What I see is we need to come to the state and say, there's a better alternative, and these are the reasons why. And let's take a look at A, B, and C to see what we can do. So that's what my hope is when we get back. If we're, you know, obviously I think we're gonna be way over budget. I think we can try to talk to other legislators about that and say, hey, where are some places that we can cut some costs? And is there a better location that already has some of this infrastructure already there? And I do think that is another avenue we can look at.
I think the overall budget total 2 years ago was $660 million. Even with the allocation that we're putting into this, or the governor's putting in this, I think 283,000, maybe 220,000. You know, it's just hundreds of thousands here and there. It doesn't really matter, right? But when we look at the 0.3% tax reduction, that was about $100 million. So that kind of gives you an idea. So each year in sales tax, a 0.3 reduction was $100 million. So we have been increasing our sales tax, and that has been going along. But as we're going along, we also we're dealing with severe inflation. And I think it's been mentioned before, the cost, I'm saying this is going to be $1 billion or more. And we're already 200,000 short, even from with the projected money that we're putting aside. We can't catch up. I mean, inflation is going to outrun the money that we're putting aside. And if they're looking at planning a building in the next 2 or 3 years and having it done, there's going to be a lot of money that, again, is going to have to come out of somewhere. And, you know, we talk about the big three, state employees, healthcare, service providers, and school teachers. You know, the governor's office has been very, very generous, I guess, with 7% last year and 4% this year. There was a lot of prediction that it might only be 2% this year. It's based on revenue projections. One of the difficult things we deal with is our revenue. We don't really know how much money we're working with until like the second week of March, when it's time to do the budget. So when we get down to the final numbers of the budget, those budget revenue projections, we don't really know. But I'm thinking this year is gonna be a little flatter than what they're projecting. And yes, we're either gonna have to delay implementation, which is not a problem with me. As we try to catch up with that money, you're gonna find, and I'll just use the example of the public defenders. Taking that was part of the summer study to put that on the state's back instead of the counties. I know from talking to some legislators that they're not gonna be in favor of that because it creates another department in state government. They were only asking for 3 employees. I find that just absolutely unbelievable that 3 employees can cover all of that indigent all across the state and the county. So that would be another department that just keeps growing and growing and growing. So I guess the long and the short of it is, we just can't afford it right now, and we are gonna have to be looking at cuts.
I'm not sure where exactly this fits in, so I'm gonna stick it in here, but it's financial. We're all assuming, because the structure of the penitentiary is 120, 50 years old, that we need a new prison. I'm not saying we don't, but there are other ways to look at this. And we look at reform, and we look at why we need this many prisoners. Why is our incarceration rate so high compared to other places? Would we be better off spending this money on rehabilitation and going that direction? I think we're stuck on, let's fight this prison, and I'm with it. But I think there's other, zoom out a little bit and see, why do we need this big prison, and why do we project that there's gonna be 3,518 years? I mean, another thought, just said anymore stuff this in is, it's money. Are we spending the money in the right spots? Yes, you brother, as they said.
Thank you for all of that, comment and conversation, as we continue to focus obviously on the economic impact, as well as the turnover that was brought forth earlier as far as 30% turnover in that workforce, with an additional 40% predicted in these upcoming times. We want to take a look at what that workforce impact is going to be within the state then. So with that current staffing model that they have, they're able to full staff within 3 buildings. So that being the Workforce Center, Jameson Annex, as well as the Hill. Obviously, with a distant and remote location, that is going to look vastly different. They are proposing from a state aspect that this is going to be a state-of-the-art facility. That state-of-the-art facility does not mitigate the need for correctional officers to continue to not only have eyes on the inmates, but also help direct and separate whenever needed. Big question obviously is, where is the staff still at location? Do they intend to relocate, or what does their commute look like from this aspect? No shock to anyone that watches the news, but we are currently short-staffed, with more predicted turnover. I can personally speak to an experience where U.S. Marshals actually talked and were responsible for sitting with a prisoner in the hospital system, because there were not enough correctional officers to help with that process as they normally would. In South Dakota, there's no surprise and definitely no question that at some point, snow, ice, and winter weather is going to limit that accessibility. Anyone that's driven on Highway 11, especially last year, the great year it's going to be in South Dakota, we definitely felt and could see how that workforce impact was there, and people weren't able to make it to their jobs. We're not sure as to what that looks like for the people that will be working within that health system. Where will they be staying? What do their accommodations look like in those drastic times? And then what is the number of deliveries that are going to happen at the site? As far as moving food supplies, that's obviously going to take very good structure as we look forward to the pavement and just overall usage of those roadways. As we transition forward, I think my thoughts a little ahead of me here, but I would like to transition into Steve Halbart. He is a former speaker of the house in the state of South Dakota and would like to share his perspective on where you're at.
Thank you very much. You know, let's do this. Everybody that thinks we need to do, please raise your hand if we need a new prison, someone. Now, how many of those people that have their hands up, how many of you ever walked through the prison? A few of you. The study that they did, we as taxpayers paid for $350,000, whatever it was. There's a 101-page report. It begins with this: absent significant criminal justice reform. This is exactly what was said. Absent significant criminal justice reform. When I started law practice 40 years ago, there were about 500 people. Now we have under supervision over 3,000. State population did not change that much. And that's exactly where it should start, with significant criminal justice reform. These people are all going to be standing next to you in line at Walmart in the next few years, except for about 5%, maybe as much as 10%. But I think it's more in that range. About 5% will stay in prison the rest of their life. The rest are going to get out. And we have a recidivism rate that we don't even take a close look at. In other models of prison reform or corrections, you'll see it as low as 20% recidivism rate. Here we probably have anywhere from 50 to 75% recidivism. And so that hasn't even been looked at. And we're talking about spending hundreds of millions of dollars on a location that is far different from what they showed in their site studies that they're modeling this prison after. The one they showed, the blueprint, the one they showed, or the footprint of the one they showed, was probably no more than, maybe it was 20 acres, but it wasn't any bigger than that. And so if you've got a West Farm out here that was still being used in the 1980s, if that's 60 acres, that's more than enough space to put a new prison if we need to build. But better yet would be to do prison reform, and actually put the money in probation and parole, as mentioned, and you get these people ready to go back on the street to reduce your recidivism. You'll then pare down that future population if you won't see that growth. So there just hasn't been an adequate amount of study at all on this whole issue. I served as speaker for a couple of years when it was on appropriations, and as you go through, you're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on things that haven't been adequately considered. It's just like, we want to get this done and move on and be done with the session. Last year, you might have noticed, there was $200 million allocated, just a number plucked out of the air, $200 million, what they call workforce real estate infrastructure. All that was absolute pure profit for real estate developers. And it was taken out of our pockets, $200 million. Had that been a bill that's specifically saying we're going to give, say, $50,000 to Lloyd Property Management, everybody would have been upset. But when you say $200 million, it's like it just goes over everybody's head. And here, this is what's exactly happening here. Nobody knows why they all put this down here for sure. You've got the prison farm on the west side of Sioux Falls there that was used for decades for an appropriate prison use. And like I say, these people don't need to, if 95% of them are going to be out on the street in the next many years, they should be going through rehabilitation and education, get their GEDs, get back on the street, and move on. But instead, we're talking about building something that nobody's really adequately studied. And that the committee that came together, I think there was like 30 people on the committee. And I think Carl was mentioning somebody that was on that committee as well. He brought up the same thing because he had talked about this before. And it was just ignored. They went right on with the idea that it's 140 years old, it doesn't work. Well, Jameson Annex was opened in 1983. And that unit down there will house about 1,000 people. And if we were doing corrections the way it should be, Jameson would be adequate for those people that need to be there. And we get some regional facilities to put up that will do the job. For example, the work release facility that used to be out by the arena, that was just the old Elks Lodge or something like that. That worked for decades. And it was just a regular building with nothing special to keep those folks in there. They simply were low security prisoners. And that's the way most of these prisoners should be, lower, medium security. There's maximum security, that's Jameson, and that's perfectly adequate for doing that. So those are the first questions to ask. All these other ideas are very practical. They need to be explored. The idea of putting it out there and using a half section of ground for something that's going to take up maybe 20 acres, that isn't. Several years ago, I spoke at a conference in regard to corrections down in Louisiana, and they have a facility down there, the Angola State Prison, covers tens of thousands of acres. That's used for production of agriculture, and that's what the West Farm used to be. Now we don't even do that, so if they're talking about doing something unique, like actually having these inmates farm, that's one thing. But if they're just talking about plopping down a new facility that's going to be just like the Jameson unit, then that's just ill-conceived, and that's the discussion should be had before the whole prison thing goes forward. That's what I would encourage you to push in that direction, that we actually need to figure out, do we need this? And I would say the answer is no. The building's 140 years old, but Jameson's only 30 years old. And you could add on to Jameson if you really needed to. But we just recently spent $8 million on Jameson. And then we spent another several million in the summer on the Sally Court out in front of the prison and new parking lot. And the existing building, it's old, and there's an element of danger there. If you have low security prisoners in there or medium security, it's not that bad. I had a son that worked there for about a year, and I was concerned about it because you got a mix of dangerous inmates and low level. But there just needs to be a broader study on this before anything goes forward. So I would not give up on the idea that the prison doesn't need to be put any place in particular. The one we've got is adequate for right now until you figure out what you're doing with corrections.
So we can open it up for some questions here. I almost said corrections. Topic of meeting, right? So any questions from the crowd in regards to that topic?
The state board of correction owns 28 acres of land. Great for the president.
Yeah, there's no reason not to use it. And like has been brought out in public here before, you've got it or else, that's not going in place at least in the immediate future. So until you get rid of that, get rid of the existing granite building there, you can't really develop that ground anymore. And then part of this idea was to continue to use Jameson as it is. So just build where you're at and out the ground, and this site down here, 7.9 million, is going to be a rounding error when it comes to this whole project. So the idea that the state already owns it, that isn't. Anybody else have any questions?
My name's Cassie. Okay, is that okay? My name's Cassie.
Are we there?
I'll try this again. I'm Cassie, and I just moved here this year. So my question is, we use the Jameson Annex, but what about like the Victor feed? Can they use that? Is that available? Instead of just plowing into prison where it's at? Like, can we use both of those facilities while are they gonna currently tear down the mill?
Mike Murphy facility down there is fine too, and, you know, the community in the Springfield area is all up in arms because all of a sudden the college is going on, and you get to prison. But it serves a good purpose. Another example is Redfield. In 1961, Redfield had a capacity at the state hospital there of 1,198 people. And now it's down to 65. We're still maintaining that facility. In fact, we just spent appropriations, we allocated $750 a couple of years ago to tear down one of the buildings. And that building, I and one of the other appropriators went through that, and he's a commercial construction guy. We both looked at it and said, what's wrong with this building? There wasn't any. So that one got torn down. But Redfield already has several buildings there, and we're spending $400,000 per person per year to keep those people at Redfield. Meanwhile, we closed off 75 beds at Yankton because we didn't pay the staff there. Most of this revolves around staffing problems. And if you just keep jacking that price up on the wages, you'll eventually get staff to go there. But you gotta figure out where that sweet spot is too, instead of just trying to keep your budget at a certain level and close off buildings that are perfectly suitable for those purposes. Most of the people that are in the pen are there because of additions. And if you could look at Redfield as an option, that'd be reasonable. We sold off the Star Academy a few years ago for about $350,000. That was just nuts, because that was another perfectly good facility on the hills. So we're just not using our state facilities efficiently.
One last comment that I got as far as the economic is, so you got a $660 million project proposed, 1,500 inmates, right? Anybody done the math? $440,000 per cell average. Huge waste of money.
And I just reminded you just that Moose Lodge House, whatever it was out of West Russell there, that was just a regular building, sheet rock, no big deal, and no significant problems out there. And almost all these inmates, if they were put into a facility that was just regular construction, they would do just fine. You do need secure facilities such as Jameson for some of those things. But for the most part, treat them like human beings, get them through their GED, get them through addiction treatment, and get them back out the door where they're supposed to go out. And that's not being soft on crime, that's just being responsible about what you're doing with these people while they're under your supervision.
Thank you.
And I think that brings us really perfectly to our last piece here, is really this lack of governmental transparency that we've been seeing. When we filed our declaratory judgment against the state of South Dakota as a group, we were looking for the discovery. What were some of the other properties or areas considered? Have we reached out to other landowners or looked at the current facility? We have just felt this general disregard for community growth and expansion as we listed above in community impact. Our final question deals with government transparency. Should the state win and this prison goes through, how would legislation be pursued as we shape it or as our state legislators shape it that would require the state to provide funds to support the prisoners and county infrastructure that will be utilized by the prison in order to protect us as county taxpayers?
So, what exactly is your question? As far as, other properties, areas considered, I think those are all things that we deserve to know. And I think that there should be no reason why the state wouldn't be able to give us, what else they looked at. I think that should have happened from the very beginning with all of this. There could have been community meetings and, and maybe at the end of the day, we all would have sat down and said, man, this is horrible, but this does make the most sense. I don't think it does.
But maybe if they would have made their case, they could have said, we looked here, we looked there, we looked here, and these are why these didn't work, and this is why this one makes sense. I think if they did that today, it wouldn't make sense. And so that's why I think they're not bringing us those options of what else they looked at. I do think that there are other areas that could be, I've talked to landowners in our area. I've talked to other legislators where their areas were looked at. I still think if we moved forward, and again, I think number one, we need to look at what Steve was talking about. We need to go back and say, hey, what could we do on site where it is right now? And why are the reasons that the state has that it can't be done here? So I think that's number one. Number two is if that's absolutely not an option, there are other places. I'm not saying necessarily in Lincoln County, although I have talked to other landowners and property owners in Lincoln County. I think along the interstate or somewhere or an industrial area would make sense where there's, access to transportation and emergency services and all of these things. So I am confident that if we could have the conversation and we could get something done. So did I answer your question? I'll let Kevin finish up.
Okay, thank you. One of my biggest concerns, I think I got a lot of concerns over all this. I'm totally opposed to this site. The costs to run this aren't even on the table yet. We have no idea what the cost is going to be to operate this system. We, as Speaker Hallgard mentioned, we have the Jameson area, the annex that they plan to keep. So we're going to be duplicating those services in another location. We'll be doing the same thing. And just a little history back when I first got on the school board in Canton, we have 2 grade schools, one for the country kids and one for the city kids. And that made zero sense to me, just to maintain those 2 buildings. We were duplicating costs in every place. So one of the things I tried the hardest to do, and we eventually did, was to consolidate that into one school, and we eliminated a lot of costs, saved everybody a lot of money. Why are we going to duplicate those services, especially out in the middle? I hate to say out in the middle of nowhere, but I like it out there in the middle of nowhere. I live just down 7 miles down east on just off 278. But it's not in the duplication of services. But I was looking at the budget right now. Right now, they have about 210 employees. For next year, they're asking for 332 employees for another $8 million increase. And I'm just trying to, we haven't even, like I said, we haven't even put a shovel in the ground, and they're already asking for almost 50% more money for staff. There's land around Sioux Falls. We could look at where the port plant is going to go. Okay, that would be a perfect location. As the speaker said, the West Farm, there's nothing wrong with that. Just across there, as we heard that just across the viaduct, there's land there that could be used to expand. I've heard people ask, well, why can't we just expand where the footprint where we're at? Because just to the west is still industrial park area. So if we just take the old prison down a brick at a time and build new one and go, again, the costs to the state are going to be, to me, exponential because we just don't have a handle on that. The cost of the counties, and I don't know if the counties, if the commissioners want to weigh in at all, but I absolutely can guarantee you the cost of the county is going to increase because has anybody talked to the superintendent of the highway department? I had a visit with him a while back, and of course, yeah, they got to keep, the county's going to have to keep those roads open. It's the state that will pay for it. Of course, it's still going to come out of your pocket either way. So there's so many things wrong with the whole process, and I think to go back full circle, the worst thing about this whole process was lack of transparency, the lack of input from the people, and even our own commissioners. This project is just, they're moving too fast. And I think one question we have to all ask is, why are we moving so fast? And why is it costing so much?
I will just add really quickly, sorry. I just recently heard, and again, this wasn't from an official, but somebody that shared with me that they are severely short-staffed at the prison, which is very concerning to me. You know, we have safety issues that are going on there, and sometimes I think, you know, obviously if you search, you're gonna see that this prison we've had problems there for the last few years. And we had, the director was changed, you know, we have a new director now. But are we trying to fix something by having a new building instead of fixing those current problems that are already there and really taking a hard look at that? And again, I wasn't on that committee, so I wish we had some of those people here that could answer some of those questions. But I do think that those are some of the answers as well that we need to get.
So as we look to end the evening, how can we get involved, or what can we do to continue this momentum? Firstly, we have a petition available. The petition is through change.org. What this petition is geared towards is for showing people that we have a back, and that we have people that support NOPE as a group and the efforts that we are trying to show the state. So this would be to garner the numbers, to garner the names, to garner the support. What this is not a legislative petition. It's not specifically for something. That step would come next throughout the legislative session. So this first petition is kind of our first step. So if you're interested in signing that tonight, we have a table at the back. You are more than welcome to do that. It also helps take your donations. The question to this litigation needs to be answered as to whether or not the state needs to comply with local county zoning and ordinance growth plans. If we want the answer, we need to continue fighting and we need the financial support to do it. We have different ways that you can give donations. We have a GoFundMe through our website. You can donate as well. We'll take monetary donations. We'll even have some buckets at the back. So help us out there. For signage, we encourage you to purchase or sponsor a sign. That not only helps us financially, but helps to spread the word. We've had a few people mention, I don't want the sign for my business, maybe I'm not comfortable with this, but I support your cause. Then please help us out by purchasing a sign to sponsor. Pay for the sign and tell us to put somewhere that is a high traffic area. We will take care of that on your behalf. Help us out by joining our Facebook page to learn about when no meetings are to bring more great ideas to life. There are 2 events that we encourage you to be at. The first one is on December 26th, and that's at the County Commission meeting. It's at 8:30 a.m. at the Lincoln County Courthouse. Showing our support would be a great way to show the Commission where we stand as a community. The second is on January 22nd. We have our first court hearing with the official litigation. That's taking place at 3:30 p.m. at the Lincoln County Courthouse. And finally, we have the opportunity to become part of an organization called South Dakota First. They're gaining momentum across the state and focused on empowering communities and ensuring that decisions affecting the region are made with the input and consent of those directly affected. That has been a huge boost for our group.
Final thoughts and conclusions. Many of us are likely being labeled as a part of NIMBY or not in my backyard. We really want to stress that if you do have the opportunity to spread the word to your neighbors, to your fellow Lincoln County citizens, that it's more than that. It's about seeking transparency. It's about the state slowing down and taking the time to consider what is truly happening, what does reform look like, what does it mean to treat humans as such, not only as landowners, but as the incarcerated as well. It's a huge issue, and we encourage every South Dakota, not just us in Lincoln County, to be involved in this process, and we are really setting precedents for the next generation. Thank you all for attending. If you do have any questions, as we said, please seek out any of the board members. We want to say a huge thank you all for your attendance, especially our elected officials, for your time this evening, and we hope that you have a safe and happy holiday season. Thank you.
Question?